Welcome to Her Valor, Her Voice, where we amplify the stories of women who've broken barriers in service to our nation. We're your hosts, Ms. Malaysia Harrell, Ms. Norma Eli, and I'm Dr. Lorraine Monty Price, bringing you the untold journeys of resilience, leadership, and triumph that have shaped our military and our country. Today, we continue to honor those who turned challenge into change and history into legacy. This is Her Valor, Her Voice, because every uniform has a story.
Yeah.
So today we are diving into a topic that's not just part of military history, but a powerful chapter in the ongoing story of equality in America. That is women in the military breaking barriers. Captain, I'm turning it over to you, Malaysia.
Thank you, Dr. Amani. And I'm just so excited to be here with you ladies this evening. When we look back at the journey of women in our armed services, what we see is not just gradual integration, but a persistent and courageous push against limitations and stereotypes.
Yes.
From the Revolutionary War, when women like Deborah Sampson disguised themselves as men to serve, to today's female combat pilots and generals, this journey has been marked by determination in the face of resistance.
Yeah.
So again, thank you, and Ms. Norma.
Thank you. And I've been all excited from last week to join you beautiful young queens again today. I'm particularly moved when I think about how each generation of military women created possibilities for the next. The nurses of World War I who proved women could handle the trauma of war zones. The WASP pilots of World War II who flew military aircraft but were denied veteran status until 1977. The women who in 1976 became the first to enter our military academies, facing hostility, but still persevering.
Now, I know you ladies are also barrier breaking women, and I mean, I'm excited to be with you guys. But when you brought up WASP, and the WAGs and what was it, the Women's Army Corps, the WACs?
Yes.
Have you guys met any of those ladies? Because I have, and their stories are amazing.
I haven't met any.
Not personally.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. I haven't met any personally either.
So I'm going to just throw out a little something that one of them told me. Okay, so she was a nurse, and she was married to a doctor, and that's great, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But they both served. But guess who the ID card was under?
Her.
Him.
Oh, well, I thought it was something different, but yeah.
Yes.
Him, yeah.
Instead, as opposed to each of them having equal right in this military, because she was married to him, she was his dependent, as opposed to the two of them each having equal status in the military. That was just one of the things. I really found that interesting.
It is.
You ladies are married to military. What's your experiences?
Well, I have my own card, ID card, and my husband, Chris, he has his own. However, as Army reservists, when we turned 60, because in the Army Reserves, you have to wait until you're 60 in order to start drawing your military pay. And so when I turned 60, well, actually, Chris turned 60 before I did. And so when he turned 60, he qualified for TRICARE for life. And I didn't, because I was still a government employee. So his TRICARE for life started. So we went in, and I had to get a dependence card. So I have a card with my picture on it, but on the back of it has Chris's information. So I'm his spouse. However, when I turned 60, this is funny. When I turned 60, same thing. He had to now go and get a dependent card. So he has his own card military ID, and then with his picture on it, just all his information. But then he also has one that has his picture on it with my information on the back of it. It's amazing because I didn't think he was. I was excited about getting his card, but I don't think he was excited about getting mine.
Yeah, we have our own separate cards. We were in different services at way different times, so we have our own.
Yeah, it sounds like things have really progressed from those times when women were coming in and being, even though they were serving also, they were still they were still dependent to their husbands.
Yes.
So it's nice to hear that, Malaysia, even though you and your husband, you guys are both military and you both have your own status in the military.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
But see, that's a barrier broken.
Yeah, and I mean,
about it.
Yeah, so many things that, that we have to consider, with people the pioneers, the people who've done this, who paved the way for us to be where we are today. And so it's just an opportunity to really just, pay homage to those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the stories that we're talking about, have talked about, and we'll talk about, they're not just historical footnotes, but they represent, shifts in how the military looks, but also how society looks. Yeah. But I don't want anybody to think that this came just because of goodwill. No. These women actually fought for it. They actually demanded it. And they actually refused to continue to accept the limitations that were placed on them.
Yes.
Captain.
I wholeheartedly agree. And, as we're honoring our pioneers, when we talk about them, I think of certain women like Colonel Mary Halloran, who directed the Women's Army Corps during World War II and fought for the permanent integration of women into the regular army. Her testimony before Congress in 1948 was instrumental in passing the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, which finally gave women permanent status in the military rather than just during wartime emergencies. So can you imagine that was just 1948 and this is 2025? Like, that was not that long ago.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that long ago. And it's like, thank the Lord, because now it's like, we have our permanent statuses in the military, which is fantastic. And let's not forget the barriers broken by women of color, such as ourselves, who face double discrimination. Women like Harriet Ida Pickens and Frances Wills, the first Black Waves officer in the Navy during World War II, or Major Charity Adams, who commanded the 688, the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion in Europe, the only all-Black women Army Corps unit deployed overseas during World War II. And that's the movie that Tyler Perry just made, which was outstanding. So if you haven't seen it, go out there and watch it.
Yeah. So
I was crying. I watched that movie and I was crying, and I just couldn't imagine, what they dealt with. And then being a person of color, a woman of color serving on active duty, like there was so many things that I identified with. And although, the scene where she goes in and she does this whole soliloquy and she's talking to him about what she had to endure, you know what I mean? And she's like, and it's like, we've had that. It's not as overt, right? So we may not have someone in our face with it like that, but the undertones, the microaggressions, and I felt it so deeply in my spirit when I saw that. And Kerry Washington did just such an amazing job with that role.
She did an outstanding job because, I was thinking when I heard it was coming out and I saw the previews, I'm thinking, whoa, why am I not in that movie? I need to be in that movie. I'm serious. I'm like, I need to be in that movie. Like Tyler
We'll
Perry.
have our documentary. We're gonna do one. We're doing one. We said we're doing one. Don't worry.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because each of us have a story, right? Just like in our opening, we said every uniform has a story.
Yes.
And I know that it does. And the two of you ladies reached 06 level.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard from you and others that the higher you climb, often the harder it gets.
Much harder.
Yes.
It's like you starting all over again.
Yes. And, I want to mention, that the 6888, their battle that they had, it was similar when I was in Iraq, and I had to operate a convoy support center. And when I got there, it was nothing but dirt. Okay. It was like a abandoned convoy, abandoned filling station in Iraq. Right. And I had to turn that into a convoy support center, that had trucks coming in, 18-wheelers coming in, moving supplies, along, the roads, and also soldiers, moving supplies. And it was very hard because it's like based on what I had to work with. They didn't give me a whole lot of things to work with. I mean, we had contractors there to help us, to support us, but it was just a long process, like working 24 hours round the clock, not having any days off, but I knew, when the soldiers knew it was things that needed to be done. So I was able to simplify, to relate to what the movie, firsthand,
Yeah.
it was very moving, and it just brought back a lot of memories for me.
Well, it's hard to imagine that movie was based on a story in, the 40s, and we're here in current day.
Mm-hmm.
And the three of us can still relate to parts of the movie. I remember walking on base and people not saluting me. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm a salute hog. I'm the least of that.
Right.
But when your colleagues are in front of you and they're saluting them, and I'm just kind of walking because I walked out the building later, and it's, it's like I don't even exist. Like, well, that's, this is interesting.
Well,
very interesting.
I would call them out on it. It's like when if I knew, someone saw my rank and was deliberately not, turning their head like they didn't see it, I'm serious. I would call them out. I'm like, excuse me, soldier, do you not see this rank on my cap? And like, oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. But it's like, it's really sad you have to do that, but I did.
Dress right dress.
Hey, I earned it. Hey, you see it. Okay. Yeah. Respect it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Same for you, Captain.
I've had incidents, not a million, not a million times, especially when I was in the Air Force, not necessarily. But when I transitioned to the United States Public Health Service, sometimes that is, depending on where you are. Number one, I don't know if everybody understands what all the ranks are when you wear certain uniforms for Navy. But also, I haven't had like a whole lot. There have been a couple of times that I maybe mention it a couple of times, but not an overall, because I'm pretty, you see me. I'm right here. Yeah. Now there are places, that are more no salute type environments, you know what I mean? So when you're working at some of the higher levels, and there's certain, in hospital areas, there's certain non-salute too. So sometimes just knowing, what those areas are as well.
Right.
Yeah, we were hospital, so I know that sometimes
medical.
That was sometimes part of it, but what I really find fascinating is how policies also changed, and how those things happen, and how women challenge the system. like Captain Kathleen McGraw, who in 2000 became the first woman to command a U.S. Navy warship, or Loretta Walsh, who in 1917 became the first woman to officially enlist in the Navy with the same status and benefit as men.
Oh wow.
Now that's that's high praise there.
Yes.
That is very high praise, and I'm just so glad that we have this opportunity to, honor the people who came before us, because there's no time like the present to
Right.
really look back at where we were to look at where we're going. So,
Right.
there's a lot of, questions and discussions that are coming up now, even now. And, we're still having the first, woman to do this, or the first, woman ranger, or the first woman, all these things. You're still having the first. But again, you have to remember where we were to
Yes.
where we're going. And so we
Yes.
don't want to be in a situation where we're reverting back. And so on that line, another remarkable figure is Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, who not only pioneered computer programming in the Navy, but she also developed the COBOL, one of the first modern programming languages. She's a perfect example of how women's contributions to the military extend far beyond the traditional support roles.
Yeah. Yeah. That COBOL was one of those first computers that came out. Yeah. And looking at the evolution of available roles, we've seen such dramatic changes just in our lifetimes.
Yes.
Yes, like it's just amazing. Our lifetimes, like that we spoke about the changes of the hair. Where our Black females are able to wear their hair differently than I was able to wear my hair when I was in. Okay,
Right.
because it's like, look, if you weren't able to do a ponytail, you were just I'm serious. It's like either you have to have a ponytail, you have to have it up. So I remember, also when the combat exclusion policy was still firmly in place.
I do too.
Restricting women from many operational roles despite their capabilities. Yeah, it restricted me from some good roles.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the lines of the hair, we've had some changes with the hair, but it's interesting to me, when you go to present because you have hair loss, right, at these ages, because we had to perm our hair to be able to lay down to get that little ponytail, and you don't have any hair up here. And
Right.
they looking at you, asking you, oh, when you were a child, did you wear braids? Like, did you see how we had to wear our hair the whole time?
Yeah.
We have alopecia and all these things, because so it's just interesting. You sparked something in me when we talked about
Yeah, I mean, but think about how much we rubbed our hair putting those soft caps on, right?
That's right.
On and off, or the berets. You had to put the beret on and you had to do all the stuff with it. There were a lot of things that were not made for us ladies.
Right.
The uniforms weren't made for us. Now, I was pregnant during my time in the military. And wearing the uniform, trying to be in standards and being pregnant was a whole other thing.
Right. So did you have uniforms that fit you, or you're pregnant, maternity uniforms?
Yes, there were pregnancy uniforms, but what I did is I got bigger uniforms also. I was able to get larger pants, the green ones, the class A's. I got a larger pants, and my jacket was a little bit larger. And then I had to, in the later months, you had to get the pants that had the band in the front, because baby gotta be somewhere. But with all the changes and all of the evolution that women have made, still things like uniforms aren't necessarily set up for us. We were talking about hair uniforms, the same with uniforms, some of the uniforms. But, as those formal restrictions were gradually lifted, there's so many informal barriers.
Mm-hmm.
When General Ann Dunwoody became the first female four-star general in 2008.
Yeah.
Like
2008.
2008, it's 2025.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the time I was in the military as a psychologist, we had our first 06,
Oh,
female
wow.
06.
We're making waves.
That's
We
right.
are.
I know. And along the lines of what you said, Dr. Imani, what strikes me about all of these stories is the incredible resilience these women showed.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't just excellent at their jobs, they had to be just
Yeah.
to be considered equal. And you all can relate to me on that front.
Yes.
They also had to navigate environments that were often explicitly hostile to their presence.
Yeah. It's just amazing because it's like it brings back, like I said, stories of, having to be the best that I knew that I was capable of being, in every area, PT, physical exercise, physical training, education, um, going far and beyond, the call of duty, working long hours. I look back, over my military career and thinking like I didn't have time to, to make any children. However, it's like 'cause I was serious about what I was doing, in the military and then also in my civilian job. And it's just I just knew that I had in order for me to excel, as an army officer, I had to be the best. Yeah, I had to compete, and that is so true. And many of the women did this heavy lifting without recognition,
Yeah.
like the women who served in the Army Nurse Corps during Vietnam War, or who made up 90% of military women in the combat zone, but whose stories are rarely highlighted in Vietnam narratives.
Yeah. I mean, that's why podcasts like ours are important.
Yes.
These stories, they need to be told, not
Yeah.
just as history, but as inspiration. We have generations of military women. We have women coming in all the time,
Yes.
and they need to be inspired and know that it's possible. You can break the ranks, you can break barriers. There are still things that we women still have not had access to.
Yes.
Absolutely. And when we look at today's military, when women serve as combat pilots, submarine
Yeah.
officers, Army Rangers,
Yeah.
my husband's an Army Ranger,
Oh,
uh,
wow. Okay.
and in special forces, we're seeing the fruits of those decades of persistence.
Mhm.
But the work isn't done. Okay.
Mm-mm.
We have a lot of work to do to still accomplish. Women still face unique challenges in military service, from harassment to family policies that don't always accommodate their needs.
Yes, it's like we have a lot of work still that needs to get done. Like, even though I retired from the military back in maybe 2015, um, there's a lot of stuff that I'm still, going through, with, as a retiree in the military. And what's happening is the fact that, as a veteran, like what we're doing, I was wondering, beautiful queens, do you guys get to interact in your professions, with females, female soldiers that are still actively involved in your daily occupations?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm a
Not
psychologist.
necessarily, yeah, daily occupation, but I'm still so much connected to many people and friends and colleagues who are still active duty, who haven't retired yet. So, when you leave service, you still have mentees, you still have people that you want to see them win, you want
Hmm.
to support them. And when they call you for advice, you help champion them
Yes.
through those valleys, just like we needed to be supported through those valleys as well.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Yeah.
And Dr. Price?
Yeah. So I was just thinking, as we're talking about women who have broken barriers, I'm stuck by how many challenges they had, but how many changes have also occurred.
Yes.
This just came up in my mind, the don't ask, don't tell. When I came into the military in 2004, it was don't ask, don't tell. By the time I was leaving, it was repealed.
Right.
But we had to keep some people safe by putting them on the inpatient ward once it was discovered that they were, part of the LGBTQ community. And that's another policy that has recently changed.
Oh yeah.
So still a lot of work. Still a lot of work to do. So
definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, Captain.
Yeah, what all these women share across generations is the courage to be first.
Yes.
To walk into rooms when they weren't expected or sometimes not even wanted. To excel not just for themselves, but for all the women who would follow. Their valor created the voices that we hear today.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. Once again, it's like, going back down memory lanes, walking into a room, at a table, nothing but senior officers, all male, and I will, walk in there and in Iraq, the combat arms guys from California refusing to get up. When the officer of the senior rank walks into a room, usually everybody stands up. Okay, it's a respect thing. But yeah, when I was in Iraq, they refused to stand up. But I didn't let that bother me. Okay, didn't let it bother me one moment, not at all. Thank you all to all of our listeners for joining us for this important conversation. And we hope these stories inspire you as much as they have inspired us.
Yeah, I loved hearing about all the firsts because it reminds us of how far we've come and how far we still have to go. But the strength, the courage, and the resilience that it took to be the first when there was no one who you could look to as the motto and say, okay, this is how you do it.
Yes.
These ladies entered rooms and they had to determine how it's going to look as they were becoming the first. Yeah, Captain.
Absolutely. We're still experiencing the first as well. And so until then, this is Her Valor, Her Voice, because every uniform has a story.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, God bless you guys all for listening. And we will see you guys next for our next broadcast for another exciting topic about women who are amplifying their voices and breaking barriers. Bye-bye now.